The sudden, brutal, and utterly comprehensive annihilation of the Vicranian Council's assembled fleet above Zareth VI sent shockwaves through every known sector of the galaxy. It wasn't just a military defeat. It was a profound, existential shattering of the established order, a public and humiliating dismantling of an authority that had wielded unchallenged power for millennia. HoloNets, usually tightly controlled by the Council's propaganda ministries, crackled with raw, unfiltered emergency broadcasts and bewildered public addresses from surviving member worlds. The official narrative of humanity as a primitive, self-destructive species dissolved in a single fiery flash above Zareth VI, the galaxy remembered. And that memory was laced with a chilling mix of awe, terror, and a burgeoning, desperate hope. On the bridge of the ironclad, amidst the lingering hum of the Sol Lance and the faint scent of ozone, Admiral Kale stood silently observing the holographic projections of galactic data streams. The initial panic was giving way to frantic analysis. Every species from the most dominant to the most marginalized was attempting to comprehend what had just transpired. Commander Anya, her earlier shock, slowly settling into a cold, focused determination, reviewed the battle telemetry. Damage reports indicate minimal structural integrity loss, Admiral. The self-repair alloys performed beyond specifications. Our Singularity core is stable, though it'll need a full cycle to regenerate for another Sol Lance discharge. Casualties: negligible. 0 human losses. Their elite fleets were tissue paper. Kale nodded, a grim satisfaction in his eyes. They underestimated us, Anya. For centuries they dismissed us as barbarians, as an anomaly. They saw our internal struggles as weakness, not as a crucible that forged resilience. They mistook our silence for extinction. Their arrogance was their undoing. He turned to a new holographic display depicting the sprawling, intricate network of Council member worlds and their associated vassal states. Now the real work begins. Zareth VI was a declaration. The galaxy has heard it. Now we show them what it means. The Council of Seven, though its central command structure was decapitated, still held vast swathes of galactic territory. Its member species, the Vicranians, the rigid militaristic Crodar, the manipulative Xylosians, the bureaucratic Eldrin, the technologically advanced but isolationist Signar, and the 2 abstaining species, the philosophical Lumina and the volatile, honor-bound Draconians, now found themselves in unprecedented disarray. Their internal comms were a maelstrom of accusations, fear, and desperate pleas for guidance. The humans had not just destroyed a fleet, they had surgically removed the head of an empire and exposed its fragile neck. Initial intelligence from our deep space probes indicates widespread internal fracturing within the Council's former territories, reported Lieutenant Commander Ilara, the Ironclad's chief intelligence officer, human with preternaturally sharp eyes and an uncanny ability to sift through vast data sets. The Xylosians are attempting to assert dominance over several smaller Eldrin protectorates. The Crodar are mobilizing their inner fleet, likely to suppress anticipated rebellions from their subjugated species. The Signar have sealed their borders, withdrawing into their core systems. And the Lumina and Draconians, they are observing, waiting. Kale focused on the Lumina and Draconian sectors. Those are the key. They were ambivalent. They understand the injustice of the Council, but they are also deeply entrenched in the galactic order. We need to show them a third path. Not subjugation, not chaos, but a new order built on different principles. Our principles. Humanity's return wasn't just a military offensive, it was a socio-political revolution. For decades, while hidden, they had not only perfected their military technology, but also meticulously studied the galactic socio-political landscape. They had identified the fault lines within the Council's empire. The exploited resource worlds, the disenfranchised vassal species, the cultural grievances, the resentment against the Council's cold, logical, and often brutal governance. They had cultivated networks of dissent, planted seeds of rebellion, and now Zareth VI was the spark. The next phase of humanity's vengeance was dubbed Operation Unraveling. It wasn't about conquering territory directly. It was about systematically dismantling the Council's power structures one thread at a time. The Ghost Fleet, as it came to be known by the wider galaxy, would strike silently, precisely leaving behind, not devastation, but chaos and, crucially, a message. Their first targets were the Council's primary resource extraction worlds, particularly those controlled by the Crodar and Xylosians. These were planets rich in exotic minerals and energy isotopes brutally exploited by the Council, their native populations enslaved or driven to near extinction. Human stealth vessels far smaller than the Ironclad, but equipped with equally advanced cloaking and disruptive technology, would slip past the heavily guarded orbital defenses. Instead of destroying the mining operations, they would disable the Council's automated machinery transfer control of the facilities and resources to the oppressed native populations, and critically provide them with the knowledge and tools to defend themselves. One such operation targeted Gideon's Maw, a mineral-rich asteroid belt controlled by the Crodar, notorious for its brutal labor camps staffed by the serpentine Cathar. Commander Anya personally led the infiltration. Her team, a mix of human engineers and security specialists phased onto the asteroid, bypassed the Crodar automated patrols, and with surgical precision, hacked into the central mining control systems. They didn't destroy the machines, they rewrote their programming, turning the automated drills and excavators against the Crodar overseers, forcing them to flee in disarray, leaving behind vast stockpiles of resources. Then came the second equally important part of the operation, the broadcast. Using the Crodar's own communication arrays, humanity broadcasted a message to the Cathar, slaves a message of liberation and empowerment. It was simple, direct, and devastatingly effective. The Crodar masters are gone. The tools of your oppression are now your own. Use them. Build your future. The Council will no longer dictate your fate. Humanity stands with the oppressed. They provided schematics for basic defensive weaponry, self-sustaining habitats, and encrypted communication channels that bypassed Council surveillance. The Cathar, a species long thought broken, stirred. Their whispers of rebellion transformed into a defiant roar. The galaxy watched, stunned. This was not the expected bloodbath. This was something far more insidious, far more revolutionary. Humanity wasn't just defeating the Council, they were inspiring its subjects to revolt. The news spread like wildfire, carried by clandestine data packets and whispered rumors. Planets that had long suffered under Council rule, seeing the sheer audacity of humanity's actions and the tangible results, began to rise up. Uprisings erupted across multiple sectors, forcing the remaining Council forces to divert precious resources from defense to internal suppression, further straining their already fractured command structure. General Zareth's successor, Grand Marshal Vorlog of the Crodar, a notoriously ruthless strategist, was incensed. They are not conquering, they are poisoning, they are spreading their anarchic ideals across our dominions, he thundered in a Council-wide emergency broadcast, his multiple eyes burning with rage. They are a virus. We must crush them before their contagion infects the core worlds. Vorlog mobilized the largest remaining Crodar fleet, a formidable armada of heavy cruisers and assault carriers, and set a course for the sector where humanity had been most active. His plan was a brutal conventional push, hoping to overwhelm the elusive human forces with sheer numbers and firepower. He knew humanity was skilled at stealth and surgical strikes, but he believed they couldn't withstand a full head-on engagement. But humanity, with its centuries of history, knew the flaws of conventional thinking. Admiral Kael, observing Vorlog's predictable movements, allowed a faint predatory smile to touch his lips. He thinks he's fighting a war of attrition, Anya. He's fighting a ghost. Operation Phantom Gambit was initiated. The human fleet, though numerically smaller than Vorlog's armada, was infinitely more agile and technologically advanced. They used their singularity drives to make impossible FTL jumps, appearing and disappearing across the Crodar fleet's flanks, never engaging in direct, prolonged combat. Instead, they focused on hit-and-run attacks, targeting the Crodar's logistical tails, their fuel depots, and their comms arrays, crippling their ability to coordinate. They seeded the asteroid fields with cloaked proximity mines, not to destroy, but to disable, forcing the Crodar to divert resources to salvage operations. Dr. Elias Thorne's newest innovation, chameleon shields, allowed human vessels to not only become invisible, but to mimic the energy signatures of any nearby alien vessel, creating utter confusion. Crodar vessels would suddenly detect their own sister ships targeting them, or phantom human fleets, appearing and vanishing in impossible locations, leading to widespread friendly fire incidents. The Crodar, a species that prided itself on discipline and order, began to descend into paranoia. Ori, the young human prodigy in technopsonics, whose abilities had grown exponentially since Zareth VI played a crucial role. She began to actively disrupt the Crodar's internal neural net communications, designed to link their commanders directly. Her psychic feedback loops would send distorted fear, inducing messages into their minds, projecting images of fallen Crodar warriors, sounds of the Overmind's dying shriek, and manipulating their battle plans, sending contradictory orders through their network. Crodar commanders, once unwavering, began to question their own sanity, their loyalty, their very perceptions. The Battle of the Veiled Nebula was a turning point. Vorlag's massive fleet entered a nebula known for its dense energy fields, hoping to negate humanity's stealth advantage. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a maelstrom of their own making. Human ships, their chameleon shields perfectly calibrated to the nebula's fluctuating energies, became truly indistinguishable from the cosmic background. Crodar sensors reported nothing but static, then suddenly their own ships disappearing from their screens, only to reappear moments later crippled and adrift. Admiral Vorlag on his bridge watched his fleet descend into chaos. "Where are they? Why can't we hit them?" he roared, his voice cracking with desperation. "They're tearing us apart from the inside. Our own ships are firing on each other." His primary tactical officer, a grizzled Crodar veteran, simply stared, his multifaceted eyes wide with terror, unable to process the unseen enemy. "This is not war, Admiral," he whispered, his voice trembling. "This is haunting. They are specters. They are the nightmares of our own hubris." The Crodar fleet was not defeated by overwhelming firepower, but by psychological collapse and technological superiority. They retreated in disarray, leaving behind a trail of disabled vessels and broken morale. Admiral Vorlag, disgraced, was stripped of command, a cautionary tale of conventional thinking against an unconventional foe. The Crodar's grip on their vast empire began to loosen irrevocably. The success of Operation Unraveling prompted more species to actively seek alliance with humanity. The Lumina, deeply empathetic and pacifistic, offered their vast psionic networks for encrypted communications and for calming the widespread panic among subjugated populations. Their unique ability to filter and understand complex emotional currents became invaluable in navigating the galaxy's turbulent political landscape. The Draconians, impressed by humanity's raw courage and honor in battle, began to send their elite warriors to train alongside human ground forces, adapting their ancient combat techniques to human tactics. Even rogue elements of the Xylosians, tired of their leadership's manipulative schemes, began to defect, offering their advanced technological insights in exchange for a place in the new order. Arlen found herself at the helm of a rapidly expanding, truly multi-species force. The challenge shifted from mere survival to the complex art of governance and diplomacy. They weren't just fighting a war, they were building a new civilization from the ground up, a civilization that would embody the lessons learned from the Council's mistakes. She delegated extensively, empowering alien leaders and integrating them into the core command structure. Jin became her eyes and ears on the ground, traversing newly liberated worlds, helping to establish provisional governments and defense forces. Dr. Thorne, meanwhile, worked tirelessly to adapt human technology for diverse alien physiologies and environmental needs, creating tools for peace as potent as his weapons of war. The primary goal of the Vengeance 2 and the main fleet shifted from direct engagement to strategic oversight and the protection of newly liberated worlds. They acted as a galactic shield, a rapid response force appearing swiftly to quell any remaining Council resistance or to protect fledgling independent systems from opportunistic raiders. Their presence alone was often enough to deter aggression. The galaxy was undergoing a profound transformation. The former Council worlds, now fractured and leaderless, descended into internal conflicts or sought to align with the new burgeoning power of humanity. The core worlds of the Signar, still isolated, watched with cautious curiosity their ancient powerful supercomputers analyzing every human move. Arlen knew that the biggest challenge was yet to come. They had won the war of steel and fire, the war of technology and tactics. But the war for the soul of the galaxy, the war for a lasting peace, was only just beginning. And humanity, with its unpredictable nature, its capacity for both profound compassion and terrible violence, would be tested profoundly. They had shattered an old order. Now they had to build a better one, one worthy of the sacrifices made.